The problem that we see is that the business has been in survival mode. It's been surviving, and what we really want is we want it to thrive.
I didn't get my bonus. Yes, of course, that's important. It's that people want to be on a winning team.
That's it. That's the theme. What's that old phrase? Culture will eat your strategy for breakfast.
Yeah.
People smell hypocrisy for miles and miles and miles.
This is Heavy Hitters, and I'm Jay Lucas, a 30-year executive search veteran. And throughout my career, I've invested in the success of countless organizations. On this show, I interview industry-leading executives to highlight make-or-break strategies and tactics that drive performance. Ready to tackle some heavy lifting? Let's go. All right, so welcome to Heavy Hitters. Today we've got Michael Coffey, who is someone that I've come to know as a culture-centric leader, genuine people-first person that is very skilled in transforming businesses. He's done it multiple times. He's a former CEO and current board member of HE Parts, a global remanufacturer of mining equipment and industrial engines, and he's helped transform that business from startup to 240 million and later exceeded 500 million. He's transitioned then later to the CEO of Manitex and drove 38% revenue growth and improved EBITDA 400%, which later culminated in the successful acquisition by Tadano. He's currently consulting with heavy equipment companies and is the author of his soon-to-be released book, Gale Force, Navigating Strategy, Culture, and Value Creation in Modern M&A. So welcome.
Thanks, Jay. It's really glad to be here, and this is exciting. Looking forward to it.
Yeah. Before I get started, are you okay with me just saying a quick prayer?
Absolutely.
All right. Lord, we come to you with thankful and grateful hearts. Thank you for Mike and his genuine spirit, the spirit that he pours into the people that he surrounds himself with. Thank you for the strategic mind that you've given him to lead and grow businesses and for him to be a reflection of you while he's doing that. So we thank you, Lord, that our work can be a form of worship. We celebrate you and we ask you to join us now. Amen.
Amen.
Okay, so let's start with Manitex. Stepping into the CEO role. When the announcement was made in April of 2022 that you were joining Manitex, it came hand in hand with the acquisition of Rayburn Rentals, right? Walk us through that, just how it all came together and how you were recruited for the role and all the details.
Yeah, happy to. So I was referred to Manitex. I was doing some consulting work and with both Hitachi on their board and a few other companies, and I was referred to Manitex, and the board had made an offer to Rayburn, and it had been accepted, but they needed someone to help them with the diligence.
Mm,
And, really, the rental industry is very, very different,
yeah.
and in some ways
Were you on
does
board
not.
at this point, or was this prior to you? Were you consulting at that time?
I was consulting. Yeah, I was consulting
Got it.
and was not with Manitex at the time. And so the deal was not, it was in its early innings, and I believe the offer was extended in October, and I was approached in November, and we got after the diligence process. Didn't take that long, honestly, 4 or 5 months. It was a really Rayburn was an exceptionally well-run company. It was not all that dissimilar to other small privately held businesses, but really, really good customer-focused ethos, great management team, and a strong presence in their market. And Manitex, the board wanted to dip their toe into general rentals, and they asked me to help them with the diligence. Shortly after the process, they asked me to consider being CEO, and it was a good opportunity. I was intrigued and flattered, not sold, and I didn't want them to be sold. So we used the diligence process as a long interview
Mm,
format. What was interesting is I had unfettered access to the CFO, and the CFO had joined Manitex maybe a year and a half earlier. His name's Joe Doolan, phenomenal guy.
mhm.
And we spent a lot of time together traveling, doing diligence work and having conversations, and it just gave a natural opportunity for me to get his opinion on Manitex, and I came away with this impression that this is a business that could really soar, that could really
Mm,
improve, and it's publicly traded, and none of us like to share anything negative, but the reality is Manitex's performance to that point was pretty lackluster, and,
mm,
it was thinly traded and underperforming its peers, and it was kind of the runt of the litter. It was operating, as a $200 million business, a micro cap in a world of multi-billion-dollar
right.
competitors, which so, I was treading lightly to look at that business carefully, but and Joe didn't know that he was being interviewed by his future boss, poor guy. But, he's, very smart and transparent. We had a diligence or a kind of an NDA established so we could talk freely about the business,
Mhm,
and it became more and more apparent that this is a company that we could really do some interesting things with. And when I joined, the thesis was Rayburn everyone thought that Rayburn was acquired so that we could enter the rental space in a broader way. It wasn't. It was really acquired so we could accomplish two things. One is refinance the business for its international status, and we had a really great partner in Amarillo National Bank,
mm,
a phenomenal oldest privately held bank in the US. Really, really neat business. And so we used Rayburn to facilitate the refinancing of the US debt. And then the second issue is the European products fit the rental market, but they were designed for Europe.
mhm,
And so it was a vehicle for us to get firsthand understanding of how those products could be designed to meet the Sun Belts and the
right,
URSs, the larger players. So it worked in that regard, but it also presented a lot of strategic rubs. It wasn't the cleanest strategic fit.
right. Yeah, it's not I don't see too many OEMs with a rental business.
No,
Obviously,
it's
they
not a
want to see their dealers have rental businesses
yeah.
or they'll sell to rental companies, but having their own rental business is definitely unique.
It's unique, and right out of the gate, when we bought the company, us Joe and I set up all of the legal structures and the ERP structures so
Mhm,
that the only thing we would share would be money, which is, fungible, you can move it around, it's pretty liquid, and back office support like HR systems. We did not want to integrate the business because you're right, and the reality is manufacturers, we don't we're not the best at customer facing activities, you know? Rayburn had this magic sauce. It was a very I'm a morning person, and so when I was there on diligence, the employees thought I was a banker, and I was given permission to show up early, but that place was electric in the mornings. It was a very, very exciting place to be, and I actually used it as kind of a storyboarding process for the rest of the manufacturing business because the team there really, really loved the customer,
mhm.
and you'd go there at 6:30 in the morning, and the lobby was full of customers.
Wow.
They're organizing their day, grabbing a
Yeah.
cup of coffee, making phone calls, meeting the subcontractors there, and it was kind of like this hub and spoke moment. It was really, really good culture and a great great little business. They did well, they improved. In a couple years, they nearly doubled their EBITDA contribution, and the manufacturing business tripled its EBITDA contribution. So both companies did well, but they didn't from an operating standpoint, we treated them as separate businesses.
So tell me about this $206 million backlog, the supply chain headwinds, the margin
Oh,
compression.
yeah, yeah.
What
So,
what what
yeah,
was it
so
like
that was
walking in? I mean,
abruptly
this is a public company. You've
yeah,
clearly got some pretty significant obstacles or opportunities, however you want to look at it.
yeah.
What's that like coming in first 30 days?
Well, the backlog was a blessing and a curse. So the
Mm,
blessing happened because of post-COVID delays and dramas with regard to what was going to happen in the market, and there was a 2.5 to 3 year delay in capital expenditures. and so that backed the backlog up a little bit more so than normal. From a healthy Manitex at that time, a healthy backlog would have been, say, 4 to 5 months worth of production, and this was about 9 to 10 months worth of
Okay.
manufacturing production
Okay.
all in,
So about
and
double.
that's not healthy. In fact, we had trouble getting chassis to mount the cranes to, and so if memory serves me, when I joined, we had roughly 45 cranes that were built that were waiting for their chassis
Wow.
to get them delivered, and so we had this ebb and flow where a lot of their production actually had to go toward old manufacturing to get it to our dealers to satisfy them, and it was a challenge, and we weren't, goodness, we weren't alone. Everyone was dealing with the same challenges
Sure.
back then, but difficult. The European business had a different set of challenges, but their supply chain was less drama filled than the US, believe it or not. We seemed to be in the United States at that time, we seemed to be adept at creating our own problems. You may remember the Los Angeles port where
Yeah.
there's something like
Yeah.
120
Oh, yeah.
or
It looked
150
like,
boat.
it looked like Lake Havasu at spring break.
Yeah, it was a sea of boats everywhere, and
Yeah.
we just seemed to policy our way into problems that we didn't really need and struggled with,
Yeah.
unfortunately, and it all came downstream. Everyone was dealing with the same, our best suppliers were really fighting every day with us to deliver, and we were fighting. But the early innings, it was exciting. I I didn't I had assumptions in what I read. It was publicly traded, and the business had, some sorted stories, and we already mentioned it was underperforming. What I found that I did not know, I couldn't read this in any report or
Mhm.
gather this information. We had really, really strong middle management. They Crane people love the DNA of that product,
Yeah.
and they'd been around for a long time. They knew what they were doing. They were very, very devoted to the business, and our customers were fantastic. You couldn't ask for a more marquee set of loyal
Mhm.
customers of Manitex. There's always exceptions, and I didn't know that, and so it took me, I don't know, 3 or 4 months to canvass the biggest of our customers and the key employees, and I said, "Wow, this is really." I didn't know what I was facing,
Mhm.
but that was welcomed wind in our sail. We had really, really a lot of good things going for us.
Yeah. Yeah. So you walk in, what is it I mean, you're a strategy guy, not for strategy's sake, but for execution's sake, which is the difference really, because I see a lot of companies that have great strategy, vision, mission, values, but then it stops there.
Yeah.
What do you how do you walk in and begin to assess
Mm,
where you start to build your strategic plan?
yeah.
Is it people first? Is it operations first? Is it financials first?
It well, it's you have to do everything in parallel. It's
Mm,
it's it's all of the above. One of the so let's talk about Manitex. Manitex was acquired and built through acquisition.
mhm.
And, so Manitex, actually, the name comes from Manitowoc of Texas.
Oh, wow.
And when Manitowoc acquired Grove, the Justice Department required National Crane and Manitex, which was called Veritex at the time, to be divested. And so Manitex or Manitowoc of Texas, or Manitex, was born many, many years ago, and it was a product brand that Dave Langevin elevated, and then Dave had acquired a host of companies around the world and fashioned the Manitex that I joined. So I think one of the mistakes is that you have to avoid in coming into that environment or acquiring a new business is to ignore where the fences are and why they're there.
Mm.
And, I've seen this before. I've been victim of this as well. You come to a business and why are they doing it this way? Why is this fence here? It's an analogy, but
Yeah, it's a good one.
the re the reality is that the fence was put there because that was the property line 30 years ago or 20 years ago or 15 years ago, right? And you can very quickly become critical of why things are the way they are when you would have made the best or perhaps a worse decision back then. So I put that under the banner of honor the past. And, Manitex had a business that was 80 years old at the time, Vala out of Italy, the electric crane
Mhm.
brand. And then they had a host of other businesses that had 35 and 25 and 40 years history. Rayburn
Mhm.
had 40 years history.
Mhm.
So I think it's critical as the new manager or in an M&A experience when you acquire business, get to know the culture that they have today and understand it and respect it. And you're looking for the common links, right? And so Manitex is a business that was operating in Italy and Romania, France, Spain, Argentina, Chile, and in North America and the US. And every one of the businesses had its own culture and should, have its own culture. The problem is it didn't have a cohesive global strategy.
Mhm.
And the employees are hungry for that. And when I was discovering that the middle management of this business was good and strong and really committed, the undercurrent was they wanted to win.
Mm.
They really were hungry to thrive as a
Yeah.
business.
Yeah.
And so that is it matter of fact, the investors felt the same way. The stock was thinly traded. By thinly traded, ridiculously low levels of shares, 7,000 trades a day. It was awful.
Yeah.
But there was a core set of investors that really believed in this company, and we made ourselves available to them. And my first job in the first 3 or 4 months was to get around and meet all of the major employees, see the operations, meet as many of the large customers as I could and
Mhm.
the investors. So I was on jet planes for
Nonstop.
4 or 5 months straight.
Yeah.
And one of the investors said something that just captured Manitex. They said, "Listen, they said, "We like this company. We've been in the stock for almost a decade. We really like the business. The problem that we see is that the business has been in survival mode. It's been surviving, and what we really want is we want it to thrive." And that just stuck with me, and I can't remember if that was the 2nd month. It was early in the process. But I just took that message right to the employees. I said, "Here's what one of our best investors said,
Mhm.
and what do you think?" I said, "What if we put together a plan that would help this business thrive?" And thankfully, they were ready for that. It made my job so much easier, and they
It's
they were
amazing
really
how much
excited
more
about it.
buy-in you get when you invite people into that process, as opposed to
Oh,
this sort of
yeah,
top-down, "I'm so smart, I've got this figured out. You're just gonna color by numbers, do what I say,"
yeah,
as opposed to engaging them and getting their input, and the
yeah.
adoption of that plan becomes so much easier.
Yeah, it's yeah, I'm a long storyteller, probably I need to learn to condense things, but one of the pithy little phrases that I've talked to managers about for years, I said, "You gotta keep something in mind. No one came to work today wanting to do something mediocre. No one wants to do something that is meaningless." And I know there's probably exceptions that are people that, and I have you should never begrudge an employee for coming to work to earn a paycheck. They're trying to raise a family,
Sure,
right?
sure.
Rather, you should come along their goals and be the very best employer in every town that you're operating within
Mhm.
so that you're retaining the best talent, attracting the best talent. And I think part of that equation is to call them in to be a part of the strategy. And I think we make them in let's face it, our industry, we're talking to manufacturers and distribution and construction equipment, and so most of the folks that we're engaging with, Jay, that we're dealing in single point margins a lot of times. I mean, it's a very, very
Right.
tight, difficult business. We're not in biotech and we're not writing software with, 45 and 70% gross margins. These are
Mhm.
tight margins. So we win or lose on the quality of our team. And
Mhm.
I just I I've never been disappointed when you call them into the strategy and explain it to them fully.
Mhm.
They will get they'll get everything, honestly. You just have to lay it out in front of them and they can handle it. And quite frankly, I've y- you always get better results if you lay it on the line and just say this is what we're working toward and this is why it's important, and then call them and quite frankly expect them to find a place in their areas of responsibility to play a role. It's all of a sudden every aspect of the job becomes more meaningful.
Mm.
And the good news, and again, it's not for everyone, right? There's always exceptions.
Sure.
But at Manitex in Europe, in the US, and Chile and Argentina, they have great, great people. Tanano has a great team. They're very, very motivated, very committed, and they know what they're doing.
Yeah. I remember you sharing these with me because we'd done some work with you as you were kind of building out your team, and you'd shared a newsletter that you put together for your employees. And this wasn't just a newsletter, it was a series. And in one of those newsletters, you were pretty transparent, mentioning something about one of your largest investors has always done a great job of surviving, which you mentioned, but we want to see this thrive. I mean, that's a pretty candid thing to share with your people. What made you think, or what gave you the sense that that was important to share with them right out of the
Well,
gate?
yeah, no, it was right out of the gate. So it didn't take long well, first of all, they knew it was a publicly traded company. So anyone that had access to the internet could look at the financials and see that the business was losing money and subpar performing. But they know for other reasons as well. They can tell. I mean, the European team hadn't earned their bonus in over a decade,
Wow.
the management team, and
Did that lead
which
to a
is
lot of turnover?
ironically, no,
Crazy.
ironically, no, and,
You want to know the
uh
one thing that I noticed in
yeah.
with companies in that position? It's not the I didn't get my bonus. Yes, of course, that's important. It's that people want to be on a winning team.
That's it. That's the theme, and so that you nailed it. That's why so I've done these newsletters at HE Park. So, the lessons I've learned, I mean, they evolve, and and they're all stolen from someone else.
Mhm.
You know, people who are smarter than I am that are doing something, and I look at it, I'm like, wow, that's a brilliant idea. I better do
Right.
that.
Yeah. But
I
you make
don't.
it your own.
You make it your own. You have to. And so as CEO, you have to own the strategy. Now, I always let my executive committee, the senior leadership team, write the strategy with me and evaluate it. But once it's set, it's cast in concrete, it's not up for grabs, and it's centralized. It's about
Mhm.
the only thing that I do centralize. The execution of the strategy is principle based and has to be decentralized. So they have a lot of flexibility and autonomy in the way that they can execute the strategy. And quite frankly, with multinational nationals or even different cultures within businesses that are acquired, you have to allow them that kind of latitude
Yeah.
to execute with good people making good decisions on principles. But it's their execution activity, but the strategy is ours. And then I have to communicate it. I'm the champion, I'm the CEO. And so we did a quarterly newsletter. I did one every quarter. I wrote the whole thing and we had it translated into 5 languages. And I would find that thing in break rooms all over the world. And we sent it home. We mailed it to their households because we wanted their families to know what was going on.
Yeah. Wow.
We just communicated what the strategy was, and it had to be something that was communicatable, so we named it. We named it Elevating Excellence, and the
Which
same.
obviously themed with your equipment.
Yeah, it made sense. We were building cranes, and people wanted to improve the company. They wanted to see their business win.
Mhm.
And so elevating excellence worked. It also became the vehicle of our core values.
Mhm.
Those are the principles with which we're going to operate the business. And it became the vehicle or the moniker for the strategy that we released to the public. So, private businesses and public businesses are different. Obviously, I was scared half to death with insider trading. We want to play by the rules, but we actually started giving guidance. My third quarter in, for the first time ever in Manitex's history, we gave guidance, which we had not in the past. And we released the strategy, and, we're pretty transparent about how we wanted to see the business turn around and thrive. The plan at that time with the board was that we would fix the basis of the business and show that it is producing. And we had, I can't remember the exact numbers, 21 million or 23 million shelved shares that were sitting on the market, but they weren't released. They weren't. And these shelves, the shelves and other debt could be used after the business was operating better to acquire more companies and grow into its foothold. That was not announced at the time. The company's now sold, so I don't think there's any problems in sharing that. But that was the strategy, was to fix the business and then have the right to go to the market and say, we're going to take 10 million shares, raise capital, this debt, and buy this company.
Mm.
And what changed was the post-COVID inflation. Our cost of capital went up like 250%, and we were financed largely in the US. And so, buying a business with that debt structure was very, very difficult. And we had a great bank, but unfortunately the bank was taking, roughly half of our EBITDA,
Mhm.
with debt service. And it wasn't their fault. It was the inflationary situation that we
Sure.
found ourselves.
Wow.
So it was a really good situation, and I'm kind of probably painting with too broad of a brush, but I I'm of the opinion that you can and should be as transparent as you possibly can.
Yeah.
And then you call the employees to join you in executing on the strategy, and then you give them a map to use so they understand where they fit in. And all of that requires really, really good managers.
Yeah.
If you don't have good leadership, you can't do that on your own.
Right.
It's a teamwork, right? But in Manitex's case, gosh, it worked, and it worked a lot faster than I thought. I thought it would take a full 3 years. The plan was to get the EBITDA margin up 6 points and sales up roughly 22 to 23 points.
Do you do
And,
that by pulling the operating expense lever or the
uh,
revenue lever? Obviously, if
well,
you're driving, 20 to 25% increase in sales, that can obviously have an
well,
effect on your bottom line, assuming that you don't allow your operating expenses to go up with
yeah,
that.
exactly. So
So these are
the
these are
impression.
efficiencies in manufacturing is my guess.
It is. So, and I think with distribution, distribution and rentals, you have different levers you can pull, right?
Mm.
The, gross margin from product support and sales, rental,
Mhm.
if you're renting,
Used
obviously
equipment.
used equipment, new equipment, and
Mhm.
you pull those levers and you look at your absorption and your SG&A
Mhm.
for variables. In manufacturing, the principles are the same, the levers are different. But we looked at our perceived production capacity without any capital investment to be made, and we found that we had an aggregated 35% window to increase our production capacity without a capital dollar spent.
It's awesome.
primarily through systems and better planning and scheduling and so forth. Now, we upgraded 2 ERPs in this period of time. We needed to do that,
Mhm.
but that was an advantage, and we did some analysis and study to determine that, and so we said, "Well, let's go ahead and improve our margin, absorbing more of our SG&A through volume." And then we looked at supply chain rationalization with an opportunity to move supply and or leverage supply from other sources. Manitex was very, very siloed. This was probably the easiest problem to fix, and it should have been we should have addressed it years in advance, but
Yeah,
it
when you
was
say
very, very
siloed,
siloed.
m spell
We
that out.
Yeah, siloed, meaning that every operation, every product unit, there are 3 in Europe and
Mhm.
1 in the States, and we had Badger and then the Chicago team. They were operating independent of one another. They weren't sharing resources,
Mm.
and it's kind of like a David and Goliath situation, if you'll go with the analogy. You know, our largest competitors were multitudes larger than us, and they had a lot more buying power, for example, and we were gonna lose if we went to their field of battle and tried to win on their terms.
Mhm.
So we had to come up with our own terms and say, well, okay, we're smaller. We're not going to be able to buy to the level of any of our larger multi-billion dollar competitors.
Mhm.
But what we could do is leverage the supply chain that we have now and work on a more nimble framework and then rationalize some of the products that we're offering to improve our margins. So, and
Mhm.
that's difficult because to a manufacturer, products are like children. You know, someone designed it and they built it and
Right.
it gets an identity to itself.
Well, and
And
and you have customers that like that particular unit or machine.
yeah, it's really proud of the Italian team. We had 14 articulated cranes that were under 10-ton ratings, which is
Wow.
relatively small.
Yeah.
And what we found is that we could build all 14 of those categories with 4 crane designs
Right.
and attachments. So we basically supplied everything the customer needed with 4 models, which in essence gave us volume discounts of scale, right?
Mhm.
And they came up with that. Remember I mentioned this idea of the
Did
we developed the strategy together, and then that local team came up with that plan,
did the
and it was
rationalization improve your manufacturing capacity too?
oh, absolutely,
Yeah, so
absolutely.
you're really hitting on both sides, both your
We
raw material
that
costs.
particular yeah, that particular initiative was capital efficient, margin efficient, and top line production efficient, and they really they did a superb job putting that together. It wasn't easy because, you know, some of the legacy products had to be sunsetted.
Mhm.
Another difficult situation, you know, is, and I think this is human nature, but you get excited about being a manufacturer that's selling into, say, 66 countries. And yet some of the countries we were only selling, you know, 4 or 6 cranes per year, which
Yeah, I
required
are you familiar with built data?
yeah, yeah.
So Nick and I had this conversation. It's along the same lines where he looks at a dealership and can sort of tell you, okay, well, what percentage of your customers are driving 80% of your revenue?
Mm.
It's a startling number. It's so small that are generating, like, I think he said it was like, I can't remember exactly, but somewhere around like 10% of your customers are driving like 70% of your revenue. And so, kind of along the same lines, you're like, wow, we could say we do business in 66 countries, but are those profitable customers? Is it
Yeah.
profitable for us to do that? It's
Well,
tough.
and
Those are tough decisions.
what you found, and you know, because again, this is the David and Goliath situation. We decided that we would direct more of our production to to markets that had more infrastructure and more demand, and most of those had better margin profiles. and then we would direct. Now, obviously, if we had an order in Morocco, I'm teasing on Morocco, but if we had an order in Morocco, we fulfilled it and all our obligations and warranty obligations. We just didn't take any more.
Got
And
it.
we
Yeah.
directed our volume to where we thought we could make a better difference and align ourselves. And the challenge is that in essence, Manitex was too little butter over too much bread. I mean, we were very thin
Mm,
and we had to go deeper in critical markets to
yeah.
drive customer performance improvements. And we did that really, really quickly. That was painful, but necessary.
Yeah.
And then we could focus our attention on growing great markets. For example, the market that we had in Chile was phenomenal.
Mm.
Great team. You know, actually were second and then first in market share in the country of Chile with a team of roughly 40 people, and they were just killing it.
Were they producing
Um,
equipment there?
they were mounting and doing repair service, and so consider and that was actually a company-owned. Most of our dealers were
I was going to
independently
ask,
owned.
or when you say team, you're referring to your dealer network as much as you are your own
Absolutely.
employees. Yeah.
Yeah,
Got
absolutely.
it.
We treated our customers like customer or treated our dealers like customers, which is
Hmm.
only appropriate,
Yeah. Yeah.
but you had to be transparent with them as well and call them into the process. In Chile, our customer happened to be company owned,
Mm.
but, they had really, really strong presence, very, very high customer satisfaction, the ability to absorb more production revenue, and the margins were great. And so, a crane sent to Chile was really helpful
Yeah.
on all concerns.
Yeah. It's funny. I was going to bring this up later, but now it's super appropriate. I'm looking at a Harvard Business Review article written on supply chain management in April of 96,
Hmm.
authored by Donald Fites, Fites. And in this article, there's a statement that says we'd sooner cut off our right arm than sell directly to customers and bypass our dealers. Do you feel like that's applicable today?
Very much so. I understand the temptation that where manufacturers want to go direct. They have the R&D resources, the warranty exposure, the branding. Next week is ConExpo,
Hmm.
and all of those manufacturers are spending a fortune, millions of
I
dollars
know.
to
It's a crazy.
it's an incredible investment, and, I understand why there's this temptation to be Tesla
Mm.
and go direct or make an iPhone, for example. The challenge is
Would you consider direct having your own, like you guys had your own sort of company store?
well, no, well, yes and no. I mean, we owned the dealer there, but remember the centralized strategy, decentralized execution. We expected the Chilean team to operate in their market and execute the way that the market was demanding. And Chile is a mining culture, it's a
Yeah.
mining economy.
Yeah.
And so you frame your product profile and your market locations based on mining.
Hmm.
And and that's what they did. And so, but principally, I think manufacturers and some of Manitex's competition was very tempted or experimenting with a direct model. In our case, um, it was a mistake, and I think in most cases it's a mistake. Manufacturers do not make good distributors. You have to have an independent team that is doing it. In Manitex's case, we had our own distribution in 3 locations in the world. I'll give you an example. There's a former Manitex dealer in Toronto called BIK, and they're a bit of an innovator, and they took our articulated product and created a next generation of tree care machine,
Oh, wow.
which is very innovative. Maybe you've seen them before, but, essentially, they mount a robotic chainsaw, a grapple, and a camera to the top of a crane, and to fell a tree, no one's climbing the tree anymore with their customers. No one needs a man basket.
Right.
You essentially arrive and, with a remote control, your feet on the ground, and you do everything, remotely. It was brilliant, and again, they adopted the technology, they perfected the technology, they're a leader in North America. Um, Honestly, that their success would have been hampered if we were, heavily engaged in that. We supported it, obviously,
Yeah. Yeah.
um, but, they were innovating to the market that they were serving. And, I again, Jay, I think there's exceptions to the rule, but, um, we took a a pretty staunch and vocal public view that we were going to embrace our dealers, strengthen our dealers, and, really move in that direction.
Yeah. That's awesome. All right. So, um, we've talked about being siloed, too fragmented, too siloed. So I'm kind of curious your take on the listeners um, who are listening today that run dealerships or equipment companies that have multiple divisions or locations,
Mm.
et cetera. Uh, what does organizational fragmentation cost a company in real terms? And then can you compute that in terms of culture and financials? What would you share?
Yeah, I think you can, so geography plays a big role into whether resources are shared. Um, for the dealers, distributors, the rental businesses, if there's a contiguous geography, that is a blessing, especially in heavy
Yeah.
equipment, just from a freight standpoint. And so there are shared services that can be leveraged and should be leveraged. There are best practices. We're a big believer in, Kaplan's balanced scorecard,
Yeah.
and we make that very transparent for the employees, very transparent for the managers. For the managers, it's a challenge because, well, to be humorous, no one wants to get on the scale. I mean, it's like a way if you have someone in your family that's wrestling, you have a weigh-in, and those guys are comfortable with it because they're all trying to make weight, and they get on the scale and then they go compete. But the average individual is not really excited about having everyone know what they weigh, um, and probably very few of us, we weigh what our license says, you know? Um, but, the same happens with, business principles. When you do a balanced scorecard and you start to share cross-functional measures,
Yeah.
it can get, um, uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And, the key for the senior team is to say, "Listen, we're focused on trending and best practices. If Jay if Jay's safety ratios or on-time delivery ratios, or, fulfillment or labor utilization ratios are better, we're with the same team. I want you to go there or send a team there and find out what's happening.
Yeah. What's the secret sauce?
Learn from one another." And then, the way I would look at it is to say, it is transparent, and if we have an on-time fill rate for parts, which we did, um, and is global, and everyone could look at everyone else's, fill ratio, I said, You're not comparing, against each other, you're comparing against your trend line."
And again, you're
And
referring to the dealers
I'm referring to the dealers or the manufacturer, right? In both
because you're
cases,
gonna have a fill rate, but they're also gonna have a fill rate.
absolutely. Absolutely. And, we didn't have enough time to get to dealer fulfillment ratios and
Got it.
move in that
So
direction
you're speaking strictly from your own
for Manitex. But
part
principally, I
supply.
would
Yeah.
say that yeah, I would say that, a lot of your listeners have multi-location, multi-brand, dealerships
Mhm.
under the same roof,
Mhm.
the balanced scorecard framework is really helpful in coming up with common categories that you can share. And the key is what's measured. The plethora of information that's available right now will sink a battleship,
Yeah, it's
and
overwhelming.
it's overwhelming. The key is make sure that you're asking the right questions. And what we did, and I think this is a good principle, you're asking the right question if the nexus of your investor, your customer, and your employee all think it's important. If it matters to your investor,
Yeah.
let's talk about fill rate. Your investor should care because proper fill rates have good turn ratios, right? And they're healthy, which is a return on invested capital. So the investor cares. The customer cares for obvious reasons. They want to know that you've got their back.
Mhm.
And they're the most important voice in that equation. And then your employee should care because a vibrant fill rate is, good for their career mobility and healthy for their company. So
It's job
th-
stability
it's job stability. And
because
so,
I've said this before. I have a friend of mine had a BMW. She'd take it to the shop. It'd be in the shop for 4 or 5 weeks. She'd get back.
yeah,
Issue would pop up again. She'll never buy a BMW again,
yeah,
ever. And the
yeah,
same is true for heavy equipment. If you can't support it in the field efficiently, if your uptime is terrible because you can't get parts or you don't have good service, the likelihood of somebody coming back to buy another one of your machines is really low, which
it is.
translates to financials, but it also translates to job security or lack thereof.
Yeah.
I
In,
love the balanced scorecard. I don't.
yeah,
I see. There's a ton of strategic planning frameworks.
mm.
How, how did you settle on balanced scorecard?
Well, early in the career, I think it was, good, great, and some
Mm,
work that we did with CRH Oldcastle. Um, this is there's two stories embedded here, or two answers to the same question that correlate quite well. Um, I visited a dealer, a Komatsu dealer, gosh, maybe 25 years ago, and they were using Cognos, which was a precursor to Hyperion,
yeah.
and they were super users, and I was smitten when he turned his laptop around and started showing me the data that he had, and I
Mm,
I just couldn't believe it. I'd never seen anything like it.
yeah.
And then, I went to work for Oldcastle, and my current partner and I were working on the same principles, but we were doing it in Excel with Hyperion through a limited basis. And now the tools are there that you can get this data and homogenize it
Yeah.
so much faster and put it essentially on everyone's laptop
Mhm.
or
Mobile
device,
app. Yeah.
mobile app. It's really great and very, very efficient. So I settled on the balanced scorecard frame because honestly, it works for I haven't found a business that it doesn't work for.
Right.
The categories
Yeah.
are really, really good, and then you can frame it, and we did. At HE Parts, we put the balance scorecard in the shape of a mountain,
Mhm.
and it was everywhere, and the employees, I said, you've gotta know where your measures are, because you pull the lever on 3 or 4 of these measures,
Right.
and someone else pulls the lever on 3 or 4 other measures. You've gotta know where you make a difference and understand what that data is telling you. And at Manitex, I don't like I'm stuttering because this is a negative story, but it turned into a positive. Um, e I couldn't get answers to very simple questions at Manitex early on, especially, at one location. I'd say, "Well, how many cranes are forecasted this month, and what are we going to make, and what's our production?" Very, very simplistic questions, and no one knew. And I would say that no one wants to watch a sporting event that doesn't have a scoreboard,
Right.
right? If you don't watch, do you know what Australian Aussie rules football is?
Mm-mm. No.
It's a cross between American football, soccer, and rugby, and it is the most brutal sport you'll ever see. And I couldn't sleep one night in Australia, and I was downstairs in a hotel bar watching this game with a bunch of Aussies, and I had no idea how to watch the game. It's very frustrating, right? It's
Right.
that principle. It's like
That's
if
me
you
in hockey.
know. Yeah, so if you know what the rules are and you know what the score is, it becomes very interesting. Well, business is the same way,
Yeah.
and the balance
It's a
scorecard
great way to
invites
look
the
at it.
employee into, the game of business in a very, very meaningful way,
Yeah.
and that's why it's been such a great tool for me over the years.
I've found the balanced scorecard. We don't use the balanced scorecard, but the principle around the balance in the scorecard
Mm,
just makes sense. If satisfying your customers, if your tactic or strategy to do that is to sell at lowest cost,
mm,
you're going to have a happy customer, but it's going to create an imbalance on the financial side.
yeah,
And that's what is brilliant about it.
yeah,
If you want to make your people happy and you overpay them, again, you're going to have an imbalance on the financial side.
mm,
Or, and that imbalance will either come through lower margins or profitability,
mm,
or it'll force you to charge more for your product, which will make your customer unhappy.
yeah.
It's a brilliant process
It
to
it's
consider. How do we develop a strategy where we don't put financial targets and our internal operations and our customer and our people at odds with each other?
mm.
But I see a lot companies that just don't do this well.
It's hard. It's hard to do, and it takes some discipline. We talked earlier about reporting in the, quarterly,
Mhm.
newsletter and so forth. We just hit the same drums, the every issue, every communication, every video from me to the employees referred to a core value, a measure on the balanced scorecard,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
or the strategy, and it was all a positive story about how someone did something, and then the executive committee was really good
Mhm.
at having town halls to keep our team informed,
Yeah.
and that sounds, I mean, the first town hall that you go to, it can be a bit of a dreary situation because no one wants to ask a question or whatever, and eventually they'll get into it because the reality is they want to know,
Yeah.
and we actually had employees working on projects come and give a report on how they were doing to their peers. Or one of them went to an industry event, and the price for admission for that industry event is they had to come back and give a presentation on what they learned.
Mhm.
Um, and again, it was a balanced approach, to use your
Mhm.
analogy, where this level of engagement improved, and good people attract good people. That's a reliable axiom if you can accept that. And the more engaged your people are, the happier they are, the better they are performing, and it becomes a virtuous cycle, and they'll attract more people like themselves and kind of police those that may not fit,
Yeah.
where you're going. It may not be the right business for them at this stage in their life,
The
which is
cultural
fine.
mores, they
Yeah,
basically are the white blood cells in essence of the business, culture body.
yeah,
And they will
exactly.
absolutely purge any kind of violator of health.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely, and to the blessing of culture is that it can propel and put fuel in the tank of what you're doing strategically,
Yeah.
but the opposite is true.
Yeah.
Gosh, I mean, if the culture, what's that old phrase? "Culture will eat your strategy for breakfast."
Yeah.
And, oh gosh, that is so true.
Mhm.
Um, And here's the biggest, I mean, people smell hypocrisy, for miles and miles and miles,
Yeah.
and if you're preaching safety, for example, and not living it,
Yeah.
um, then, you have set a cultural, you've sabotaged your culture, right out of the gate,
100%. Yeah.
and
I call that corporate schizophrenia.
yeah, yeah,
I mean, it's like we say we're this, we don't behave anything like it.
mm,
You create so much cynicism when you establish core values that you don't uphold, that you let
mm,
certain people get away with not upholding. It
yeah,
just will ruin a culture, but it
it
happens all the time.
it does. So Steve Berner was the former owner of Rayburn Rentals, and,
Mhm,
he didn't fancy himself as a cultural icon, but, his stores were pristine
mm,
and you could eat off the floor, any of them, anytime, and, he was not opposed to picking up a broom, and when people see the former owner of the business walking around with a broom, that sends a distinct, message to the rest of, the business, right? And, but we can all do that because informal influence is a lot more powerful than a job title.
yeah,
But in Steve's case, he had both. He was the founder of that business, a lot of blood, sweat, and tears. He was the owner of that business. He stayed on after we bought it. He stayed on with me
mhm,
and, was a really strong, um, partner to build Rayburn. Rayburn has actually been sold now to Sunbelt, and, Steve is retired, but, great guy. He's on my mind. I talked to him yesterday. So, great guy, and he did that. I don't even think he knew how, powerful his cultural messages were, but,
mhm.
they were.
And how much of that message do you think was, intentional versus that's just how he was?
Well,
Like a forethought, if you will.
I think he would, I'm cautious to tell too much of his story, but he was very transparent with me, and, he had a mentor, that Steve called a second father, Gene Rawl, and Gene passed away in January, unfortunately. He was in his 90s, very spry guy, and, he invested heavily in Steve early on and
Mhm,
was a co-partner in the business venture and really drove, behavior and culture and leadership and influenced him in powerful ways. And Steve's been some of the stories are just really, uh, touching and life altering to hear them.
yeah.
Um, and we all have those folks, people who invested in us, and Steve will tell you that Gene did that for him. And so I think, part of it was intentional for things that he learned from Gene, and part of it was, um just became culture. I mean, Rayburn's in West Texas in the Panhandle, right?
Mhm,
And that's a show me part of the country. People pick themselves up by their own bootstraps, and and it's not beneath anyone, uh, to unload a piece of machinery or to sweep the floor or to bring a set of GET replacement teeth out to a customer on July 4th. It's not beneath
right.
their, um, the way that that part of the country works, and so it all fit, together naturally.
That's great. Yeah,
Yeah,
I think we all have, well, maybe not. There are a lot of people who are fortunate, and I hope that they're recognizing of the people, the leaders that have influenced who
yeah.
they've become. Um, sounds like, Manitex had a lot of that, which is awesome.
Yeah, they did, and, a good legacy of middle managers that stuck around. Um, and, now, the management team, not all of them survived. Um, the leadership team, we had to make some early changes, and, we went from 6 general managers to 3.
Mhm.
And did it the right way. Thankfully, um, we had a good leadership team. Oh, this is interesting. One of them, I won't name names, but one of them was operating. They were on the wrong seat of the bus, um, and you'd asked a question earlier, and in both M&A and when you're a new manager on the scene, I'm an advocate for being transparent, at least transparent as you can.
Mhm.
And I knew that we would have to replace this manager. They were one of the 6, and it just was not the right fit for them. But I had this assumption that their heart and soul was in the business, and they love the customers and vice versa. And so we structured a new role for this individual. And and I was gonna go and recruit the replacement. And Jay, you helped me with this actually. Um, and so, I could have done that silently. And I sat down with them and had dinner. And I said, "Listen, I want to ask you to trust me, but it's going to take a little time, and I'm going to have to earn your trust. I understand that. So here's how I'm going to do it. I'm gonna let you in on all of the decisions that I've made so far and that are in process.
Mm.
And I'm also gonna tell you about your new job, and I just laid it all on the line. And I said, Instead of asking you to trust me, I'm gonna trust you, and you have to keep this confidential." Um, and my hunch was right. They handled the news. They were extremely trustworthy. Uh, they did exceptionally well in the new job. I'm so proud of how they thrived in that
Mm.
new role.
Mhm.
And, but it's risky, right? Because
Yeah.
they could have the response could have been disastrous. They could have,
Yeah.
broken faith with me, or,
Yeah.
um but, you know, I and I'd be lying to you if I wasn't, damaged by being transparent with people in the past. But it's a better policy. It'll pay.
There's no better alternative. I mean,
I don't know one.
yeah,
I don't know one. And,
operative word there being better. I mean, there are
yeah.
alternatives, but are they better? No.
Yeah, and we're all imperfect, as flawed as we are anyway, so there's
Mhm.
no perfect alternative. We're dealing with people after all.
Yeah.
But, um, there's good principles, and I found that to work out really, really well.
It's funny how being honest with somebody is the ultimate sign of respect.
Yeah, I like that. Yeah,
Especially when what you're sharing is not easy.
yeah,
Might sting a little bit, but
yeah,
you gotta do it with care and compassion. But
yeah,
yeah,
I think, people will strive to live up to the expectations you set for themselves, as long as you're setting them for yourself as well.
sure.
And there's authenticity there.
Mhm.
And, in this particular case, it was a winning decision.
Yeah,
They're still thriving at the company today, and they're doing great.
that's awesome.
Yeah.
All right, we'll start to wind down. I wanna get your input on something, before we start to talk about your book because that's really interesting
Oh,
to me.
all right. Shameless
Uh,
plug. Thank you,
yeah,
Jay.
no, it's not a shameless plug because 'cause I'm the one doing it. You've led companies through private equity ownership, public companies, acquisitions, international operations. If there's a single most important skill
Mm.
that you think or believe or have proven in your own experience separates executives who thrive at the CEO versus ones that struggle, is there one thing that you can put your finger on?
There are bigger things. I don't know if there's
What
one
comes to
thing.
mind? Don't
Let me
even
let
narrow it
me tell
down.
you what I've been learning lately that is just, so meaningful to me, and I
Yeah.
think helpful to senior executives.
Mhm.
When you and I were kids, we were coming out of the Jack Welch age, and I was actually hired into this industry, through a division of Flora Amico, and they fashioned a leadership development program that was fashioned after General Electric. Everyone wanted to do that, and I think back then the idea was that you hire superhero executives that have, and Jack Welch was otherworldly. I mean,
Yeah.
Jamie Dimon is probably the closest to a Jack Welch today,
Mm.
right? He's just, people seek his attention. They wanna know what he thinks about
Sure.
things.
Yeah.
Um, and I think the superpower today is collaboration.
Mm.
And, for the CEO, but also the senior management, if especially in the businesses that I've been running were born out of M&A, and they were multicultural,
Yeah.
by design, um, which means that you have to be teachable and humble and inquisitive and curious, and those are good attributes for collaboration, and that is probably one of the strongest assets that I've seen, especially when you're working on strategy that crosses, um, P&L lines.
Yeah.
Sometimes state lines, sometimes country lines, but when you have different businesses that are working together and they need each other, you need folks that can collaborate. Um, doesn't mean they don't have an ego. As a matter of fact, they should have a robust ego. It should
Yeah.
just be based the ego should be based on team performance.
Right. Right.
The characterization is, "How did we do? Isn't this great that Ray saw this problem? Ray, come on up here. Tell us how you solve this and what we can learn about it." It's as opposed to, um, this super friend or superhero type. They come in, they do the double teapot, they have a cape on, and this place is burning, but don't worry, I'm here to save the day, and you know what I'm talking about? They do that superhero pose.
Yes. I've never
Yeah,
heard it referred to as a double teapot, but
yeah,
yes, I know
yeah,
exactly. I have this perfect
the
vision
fists
of
are
the
in the hips, and they
superheroes
they
when I
puff
was a
their chest
kid.
out, and those listen, I've hired some of those guys, and they're always talking about their resume and what they've done in the past, and, you know, and this place is in really, really bad shape, but don't worry, I'm gonna save the day.
Right.
And, I just like I've been on this theme and I've learned through collaboration, especially as a CEO, and when I can find competent A players that are willing to collaborate, gosh, that just, I am attracted to them.
Oh,
I
yeah,
learn
it's
a lot from them.
amazing. It's a contagion, I mean, it just spreads and works its way through the entire permeates the whole organization.
Yeah, yeah,
That's, in 5 dysfunctions of a team, that's that first layer, that
yeah,
trust,
yeah.
and
The
that
cr
trust
the
is built through collaboration. So, yeah, 100%. Well, okay, so you've got all this great experience. At what point did you decide you wanted to write a book? And how long did it
yeah.
take for you to take it from an idea to an action step?
Oh, those are really good questions. I actually started, when I was transitioning, out of the CEO role at HE Parts.
Mhm.
This is at the heat of the I resigned 3 months before the pandemic and had a 15-month notice, and so I had a lot of time to think about the transition. I actually hired a coach to help me walk through it.
Mm.
Great guy, he's a good friend,
Through the
and,
book or the transition?
no, the transition,
Got it. Yeah.
and I started thinking about some of these principles, and, initially, the first principle was, what are the irreducible qualities of leadership that I can't teach anyone?
Mm,
Um, you know, and so I started thinking about that, what those were,
mm,
and that was way back in 2021 and 2022, and then I started working for Manitex, and I shelved the idea,
mhm.
and then, last year, dusted that off again, and Gale Force stands for Global Action, Local Execution.
Mm,
Global strategy that's executed locally.
mm,
And in essence, there are three principles to the Gale Force. One is have a unassailable strategy that you can articulate to every stakeholder in the business. Your investor, your customer, your employee, they all need to understand it, and they
mhm,
should.
mhm.
And that's you're inviting them into the strategy, and
Yeah.
the strategy needs to be well understood and articulated. The second is engage your employees in the strategy, which requires really good leaders. And those the unassailable attributes of leaders. My acronym is DRIVE, but it is the qualities of a good leader that can help you execute on this strategy really well, um, and engage the employees really well. And then the third is you have to have real time, reliable data. That's where the balanced scorecard comes in.
Mm,
Um, you get the reality is the strategy is going to require fine tuning, and if you don't have good, reliable, real time data, it's hard for your team to fine tune
yeah.
and respond. And and so that's the idea of the Gale Force. And frankly, it was a mental health project. You know, I I just had some free time
Yeah.
and wanted to get these thoughts down and tell the story. And it's a division of Forbes is publishing it in July,
Awesome.
and um, it'll be pre-released in April, mid-April, and so we're really excited about the project.
What advice would you give somebody who is thinking about a book, but just hasn't begun to act on that?
I was afraid of doing it because I don't consider myself a writer,
Yeah.
right? So don't let fears beset you.
I love that.
Um, and your experience and your story may be just the thing that will help a colleague or a friend, a business owner
Mm,
to succeed or to grow into the individual. And the reality is that's how, I mean, that's the story of everyone's development. It's a passing on of information. It's storytelling, learning from others. And so don't be afraid of that process. I was, understandably.
mhm.
I didn't consider myself a writer, and I hired some folks, and the team at um, Forbes Entrepreneur, they have good editors to help you with that process, and they did.
How did you know to
Um,
contact them?
I think they contacted me,
Oh, okay.
and yeah, I had this idea framed out, and they contacted me, and it probably took me 2 months to have the gumption. I had a couple chapters written, and I had a framework, and I sent it to them, and it was they were brilliant at the process because they challenged your thesis and
Mm,
helped me structure it in a way that would unfold well and be hopefully an interesting story. Um, and it's it and it I poke fun at my own shortcomings and failures and trip ups over the years, but um, I don't. Um, my early mentors were kind of legends in our business, Bill Traylor and Charles Snyder with Amico. And I was really lucky to have them both as mentors early on. And when I was in my mid 20s, they're like, listen, you're going to fail. You're going to just fail forward, and the beauty of that culture is they let kids run parts of the business, and there were guardrails, but they let us do it. And it was a great experience.
thank you for that. That's awesome. Maybe
Yeah.
one of these days I'll take all these jumbled experiences in my mind and turn them
Yeah.
into something that
I think you just committed to it, Jay. I think
we'll
if
see.
you said, "What would you say to?" I said, "Don't be afraid to," and I said, "I think it will." So
Yeah.
you've
Er
heard it here first. What's the title of the book?
Future author. That's great.
Yeah,
For business owners, branch managers, aspiring leaders that are in our audience, who are in the thick of running a heavy equipment operations,
yeah.
is there anything that you wish you had learned early in your career that would have changed maybe how things, not that things needed to change how they worked out, but maybe how you approach work or,
Yeah.
um,
You know, 2 lessons that I think
okay.
are really, really well correlated. So people who are listening to this podcast, by nature, you've given us an hour of your time.
Mm,
You care
yeah.
about developing yourself, otherwise you wouldn't be here. So that's a really, really good sign. Um, all of business is about people. Every problem that your business has faced was either created by a person or presented to you by a person, and it'll be solved by people. And you'll never regret focusing heavily on your team, especially when you get that first title and you have some formal responsibility for your team. Focus heavily on them. There's a guy named Lencioni. I think his first name is Peter,
Yeah.
and he has this.
It's Pat Lencioni.
Yeah,
Yeah.
excuse me, Pat
Yeah.
Lencioni.
Yeah.
Great, look that up. Great formula. It is absolutely foolproof, and it's a recipe for highly engaged or highly demoralized teams. Focus on your teams. The second is that everything you do to invest in yourself, if you go get an MBA or whatever, I teach, they dust me off and I teach the occasional class at Emory University Goizeta School of Business, and it's fun, so much
I
fun.
bet.
They give me a lot of latitude. Every time I end the class, I said, "Remember, you are not here for yourself." And I was full of vinegar when I was in my 20s and 30s, and I was building my career, and I get it. Aspiration and desire and drive is fantastic. It's really, really good. But if you're aspiring to be a leader, none of what you're learning is there for yourself. It's always for someone else,
Mm,
always for your team. And so focus on your people and remember that your success is built on their success. And despite the shortcoming, there's a lot. This industry is tough. It'll chew you up, work you long and hard hours, and no one is taking um, trips to Jamaica or the Caribbean for sales meetings. You know, we go to places like Des Moines, in the equipment industry. Our highlight is to go to Las Vegas every 3 years if we're lucky.
right.
So the margins are tight, but it's still worth it. It's a great, great industry with awesome people.
No doubt.
And I think if you focus there, you'll be successful.
Definitely, definitely thankful to be a part of it myself. So,
Me too.
well, it's been a great conversation and really always enjoy spending time with you, not just on a podcast, but just in general. I've always found your patient style of communication, like you're super thoughtful about
Mm,
your words. You've spent
mm,
time. You're not just saying stuff. Which
mm.
which gives me this, sense of genuineness, and so I certainly
Yeah.
thank you for that, and
That's owing to a lot of shoe leather that I've eaten over the years. Yeah. Yeah, I'm really grateful, thanks for the opportunity.
yeah.
I think this is, heavy hitters is such a great, tool for our industry, so,
Oh, yeah, thank you.
it's
I
awesome
hope
that
so.
you're doing this for us. Thank
So,
you.
to that point, you'd said that whatever education somebody might be pursuing isn't for them, and that's absolutely this podcast. This is not about me. I don't care to be Joe Rogan. I don't need to be popular or famous.
Yeah.
But if there's a nugget of wisdom that we might be able to promote and share through our network that can help somebody improve, that is really what it's all about. 100%. And so, thank you for taking the time to share your wisdom and experience. And if somebody wanted to get in touch with you, I know you're doing some consulting work now. Let's say that there's a business that needs help with evaluating an acquisition target or looking to sell or just needs some general guidance around strategic planning or anything really. What's the best
Yeah.
way for somebody to get in touch with you?
LinkedIn is the easiest way.
Okay.
Easy to remember the last name, Coffee like the drink, spelled with a Y. So jmichaelcoffey.com or jmichaelcoffey at LinkedIn.
Yeah.
Our consulting business is called resurgenceadvisory.com.
Okay.
But yeah, I love to talk to folks and get connected in the industry. And if we have an opportunity to help each other out, that's what it's all about. That'd
Yeah,
be
we'll put
great.
the links to your contact info in the show notes, so anybody wants to reach out can access those there.
Great.
Awesome. Mike,
All right.
thank you so much.
Thanks, brother. Good to be with you.
Thanks for listening to Heavy Hitters. And if you found today's episode valuable, don't forget to follow and share. Now stay focused and stay tuned.